I realized I said this was going to be the last video, but it's not, largely because of me getting into the subject matter. So this video is on the next evolution of the column click sort program, where we're eventually going to do a column click sort. And what happened in this version is, for one thing, we totally got rid of the generic list student record, because I followed an old dictum of Robert A. Heinlein, where he said, if you have a problem you're having trouble solving, solve the part of the problem you can solve, and then step back and relook at the problem. And when I stepped back and relooked at the problem, I realized in the second video we created a list box called LSV student data, and a list box is essentially a collection. The items property is essentially a collection, and that collection is pretty much identical to the generic list of student info. So we don't really need two different collections of the same data. So I just got rid of the generic list. And then I also got rid of the binary write and binary read buttons. If you hear a bunch of excitement in the background, one of the innumerable dogs is giving birth, and two kids are running around announcing it. But to get back to what I was saying, I got rid of the binary write and binary read buttons that were a characteristic of the original program that we're scavengerizing to create this program. And I still need that code, so when I say I got rid of the buttons, and I also got rid of all the code behind those buttons and relevant to those buttons and so on, what I really did is I just copied the code to a notepad file, because I'm going to need to reincorporate that code in future evolutionary versions of this code as it evolves into the ultimate column click program. And then another thing I did was I tried to center the columns in the list view, and I came across a weird Microsoft bug, and I looked on the internet to see if it's really a bug or there's something I could do to fix it, and it turns out it's really a bug, but it's such a entrenched bug, Microsoft is now just calling it a feature. And in order to understand the distinction between a bug and a feature, I remembered an old cartoon. I think this cartoon explains the difference between a bug and a feature better than I can. But what this feature is I was able to center all three of these sub-items. But when I tried to center the student name, basically to center it I brought up the columns collection, and I go down to, I usually use that organization, and then you go down to text align to center things, and there's a drop down and it says, oh yeah, you can center it, and you click on it and it stays at left, and there's nothing you can do to make it not be left. So basically, just to bug them, what I did is I added a bunch of spaces to the name, student name, in the column header, so it looks centered even though it's not. But you'll notice the data itself for these other columns, the data will be centered under the columns because I have it text align center. But this is still really text align left, so these are all going to be on the left. So that's a Microsoft ListView feature. But the next thing I did was I added a function called append ListView data that populates the ListView data based on one filling out the data and clicking the button save student info button, which is the only button we have left. We got rid of the other two. And this essentially I've showed many times, but for people that haven't seen it, you create two objects, a ListView item called LSV or LVI, and a ListView item dot ListView subitem called LVSI. And then I instantiate the initial ListView item in the usual way with a new ListView item, and I set the text property to the student name from the past student info structure. And then I create a new ListView item, ListView sub item, and the LVSI, and set that text to the student number, which I have to convert to string because everything in the ListView is going to be a string, which is another difference with the items collection. All the items are going to be strings, and we're going to have to remember what type they are in order to convert them back if we're going to use the items collection the way we were using the ListView student record generic list. And then there's no problem with using the LVSI over and over, because we're just creating an object on the heap and then copying the other items to it, date of birth and average mark, and then adding each of these sub items to the main ListView item with the ListView item sub item function. And then once this whole structure is created, the whole row, we take the actual ListView control that's on the form and do a items.add of this ListView item, which creates the new array to display, the new array of fields that's a record. And the button Save Student Info is pretty much identical, except for one line where we replaced adding to the student record generic list array with a call to the function of append to ListView data. So right now this only displays the data in the ListView, and once we close the program, it's gone. You know, it reminds me of a cosmic elf I saw demonstrated in a class, I don't know, like 25-30 years ago or something. It's before the first PC, but it was sort of a precursor of the first PC, and it was like a breadboard that had components wired together, including 8 switches, and the guy had a long list of paper with binary numbers, and he'd set the 8 switches and press a save button, and then once he typed in the whole thing, which probably took him like 20 minutes, then he hits the run button, and a kind of crude version of the Star Trek Enterprise, although it was really impressive at the time, goes flying by on a TV screen that the Cosmic Elf is hooked up to. But then as soon as he turns it off, the whole program is gone, you know, because it's all just typed into to RAM. And you have to admire that kind of fortitude to do that every time in order to demo the program. But this is like that too, because it just displays on the ListView, and it doesn't save the data at all, which is what the binary write and binary read button codes do that we're going to reincorporate in probably the next video. So if we compile and run this and type in some student data, say Travis McGee, and do save student data, you see the data appears on the ListView via that code we just looked at in the append ListView data function. And I can continue doing this all day if I don't mind it disappearing. Actually, her date of birth was in the last book I read. I think V is for Vengeance, but I can't remember what it was. So now we have 2 displayed in the ListView. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a lot, and in the next video we'll stop frustrating ourselves and start saving and rereading the data so that we don't lose everything. I'll see you next video, and I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe.